So I guess they're on to South Carolina.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
We've been pretty hyper-focused on what's going on here at home, reviews of the state of the state, and all sorts of other things. The 195 Washington Bridge situation remains a high-profile conversation for all of us, no doubt. But you got to keep an eye on what's happening on the national scene. We are in a presidential political year, and although 70% of us reportedly say we don't like it, we don't want it, I wish it would go away, it's not going to go away, and we've got to make a decision come November, and the process by which we get to that decision is, I don't know, fascinating, depressing, depends on your point of view, but it's time, you know, after New Hampshire to check in with one of my favorite experts on this whole thing, and we will in a second. Great to have you in. Thank you very much for tuning in to the broadcast of my state of mind, which is reflective of my commentary. I understand that 2024 is a big year. I also understand that every day on the radio, weekdays 3 to 6, I have to come there and facilitate a conversation about things that are important, like the presidential election. And I, too, like 70% of America, just do this over the idea that it's Biden and Trump. Anyway, forget me. It's about you and what you're thinking. Ted Nesi served you by going to New Hampshire and offering local reporting on what happened there this week. Let's take a look.
Well, the polls said Donald Trump would win the New Hampshire primary, and he has. The question now is whether he won by enough to put away his only remaining rival, Nikki Haley.
Now, you've all heard the chatter among the political class. They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation.
Who the hell was the imposter that went up on the stage before and claimed a victory? She did very poorly, actually. She had to win. The governor said, she's going to win, she's going to win, she's going to win. Then she failed badly.
Attention will now turn to South Carolina, Haley's home state, where she argues she can beat Trump. But right now, polls show her well behind the former president. In Manchester, New Hampshire, Ted Nesi, 12 News.
All right. You and I are not in the prediction game.
That's right.
But my friend Joe Cammarano from Providence College will be baited into predictions nonetheless tonight. Welcome. Happy New Year. Belated.
Shoot. Happy New Year.
Will Nikki Haley compete in the South Carolina primary?
I don't know. I'm assuming she's trying to hang on until Super Tuesday, the first Tuesday in March, where there are a lot of friendly states for her. She doesn't have a ton of money, but she doesn't need a ton of money because 4 times the amount that she has been spent by super PACs for her. So she can, theoretically, as long as her billionaires still back her, she can stay.
We got to remind everybody what super PACs are. These are the independent expenditures that are, by Supreme Court rendition, legal, constitutional, and
their contributions
lethal.
and backing are completely secret by constitutional doctrine.
Right.
Not by the Constitution, but by the doctrine.
By the doctrine. The difference being?
The doctrine is what some justices said some years ago and formed a precedent that we now follow. But as with Roe versus Wade, that can be overturned.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that a little bit because the politics of abortion certainly are going to be front and center in the general election once the smoke clears, I think, on this nomination process for the Republicans. Yeah.
Super Tuesday, if Haley were to hang on, she has a shot at winning 4, 5, 6 of those primaries. Places like Maine, Colorado, Tennessee even, I think Oregon is that day. There are several of them that are Minnesota. They're conducive to a sort of a more mainstream, traditional, business-oriented Republican, and that's who she is. So if she can hang on through South Carolina, where we know she's going to get trounced, The problem is that obviously the Trump organization has enormous capacity to pressure other people to endorse him and to drop out. Can she withstand that pressure? My guess is if she wants a political career with the Republican Party, she won't. But if she doesn't really care about that, she'll stay. Because, think about it, if Trump ends up for some reason not being able to run in November, who's the person who can make the best argument? The person who stayed in the longest.
Well, on that, okay, so let's talk about that. Do you really think, well, remind everybody what the process by which a legally disabled Donald Trump is rendered. I don't know that we'll have a defined legally disabled Trump no matter what. We have a conviction, if it actually happens, may not happen in any timely fashion before appeal.
Conviction does not exempt him from being on the ticket.
Right.
And we know that Donald Trump won't voluntarily step down unless it's the last possibility for him. So the only way that this could happen is they go into the convention. There are a large number of unpledged delegates this year for the Republicans. They changed the rules. Trump worked very hard to have the rules changed to favor him, but the winner-take-all provision could result later on in him losing a lot of races and a lot of delegates he wasn't planning on losing.
The winner-take-all provision, meaning that if you win a state by one vote, a primary, 50% plus one vote, you get all the delegates.
That's right. And, Republicans have generally allowed that, and parties make their own general guidelines, and then states make the specific rules. And Republicans have historically allowed winner-take-all. If you get 38%, and that's the highest, you get all the delegates. There are more of those states this year, and it was done because the Trump organization pushed the states to change the law to make them winner-take-all, thinking he'd always win. But let's just say things crash and burn on the legal front in April, May, which is a good timing for that to be a possibility. Then those winner-take-all primaries could go to Haley inadvertently because all she needs to do is get more votes than Trump.
But we're top-heavy schedule-wise well before May.
March.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
but
I mean,
March,
there's a March 4th start date for a trial in Washington on the
right.
D.C. January 6th case. But based on still as we speak, I mean, heck, we record on a Thursday afternoon here for Friday and Sunday viewing. You could see a Friday appellate court decision that would mess this conversation up. By the way, that happens to me all the time. We talk about things on Thursday, and on Friday they all blow up.
Absolutely.
They're kind of overdue to kind of make a decision on the immunity issue for Donald Trump.
At the appeals court level, yes.
At the appeals court level. And then the question will be whether or not the Supreme Court actually takes the case. They may just let it sit. They may take it. That's a jump ball.
Right. But
so I don't know how they get a trial for March 4th is what I'm saying.
Well, that's right. But if the E. Jean Carroll civil decision comes down and the monetary damages are dramatic, and Trump, who doesn't like to be told things he doesn't want to do, reacts in a very bad way, an inappropriate way, I think the best way that Haley can get Trump votes is to get Trump to talk more in a way where everybody sees it, because his behavior is particularly problematic for about a third of the Republican Party. So it's possible that by March, with those moderate states having winner-take-all primaries, people will be fed up enough with Donald Trump and the prospect that Haley could have a couple of upsets and take all the delegates. But the numbers just aren't there. Trump is way ahead of pace. Haley's significantly behind. We just started, but it looks really bleak. But the question is, what happens if Trump won't be on the ballot?
Yeah,
it's possible
we're
that Trump
riffing
won't
here.
be on the
I
ballot.
don't see the E. Jean Carroll case, the sequel, as we're looking at right now, even with another $5 or $10 million.
He'll probably appeal it again and again.
Penalty,
and
I think. Look, the MAGA voting base is completely unaffected by that.
Absolutely.
Your projection that there's a different complexion in certain states on Super Tuesday, I think, stays plausible no matter what the Carroll case calls for.
Yeah.
She may, but she's not inclined to take these cases and ram it down his throat. She falls short of it. She doesn't want it, and I don't know how that becomes an asset for her.
I don't think Nikki Haley has any ability to change Trump's fortune. I think Trump does. That's my point, is that Trump is not likely to go so far overboard in his negative response to any kind of outcome that's not in his favor. But that's one of the possibilities, that he's going to go just a little crazy enough so that moderate Republicans in Colorado go Nikki Haley's way, not because of Nikki Haley, but because of Donald Trump.
All right, so we have headlines that show it. Trump dominates South Carolina. I mean, this is a 35, 40-point situation for him.
Yeah.
You said something earlier, Joe, that I think is kind of fascinating, that she knows she's going to get creamed in her own home state. Should she take a tack that says, "Listen, I know I'm going to get creamed in my home state, but I'm just trying to get to Super Tuesday"? Because putting up some kind of a battle to try to narrow a 40-point gap in South Carolina seems very difficult to pull off.
Yeah, no, the demographics of support for Trump are such that South Carolina, if he gets under 60%, he's not performing to expectations because of the high evangelical population, which 9 out of 10 go to him. And so I don't think South Carolina is winnable at all.
Because he's of divine providence, correct? I mean, he's provided
I'm doing a lot.
You're going to have to help me with this whole concept.
I'm doing culture theory now to try to understand this. And 8 years ago, I was talking about professional wrestling and how it's all game. And it still is, but now there's this concept called fandom, where you have all these anime characters from Asia, and then they have these Comic-Con type conventions where people dress up and go there as their favorite anime. That's a lot of what the Trump phenomenon is. It's essentially this cultural phenomenon, or Taylor Swift, the same sort of thing. That for some reason we're in a cultural moment where it's all the aura, and we go play acting rather than actually living a real life.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about, the big picture and whether or not, a couple, 2, 3 states actually ought to determine who runs for president. Stay with us. All right, so we're talking about whether or not this thing gets to Super Tuesday. Listen, I understand the power of incumbency, and every election cycle is kind of different depending on whether the seat is vacant or which party is most competitive, and sometimes it goes down to the wire, but not lately. These decisions are made really, really early.
Mm-hmm.
People lament the idea that we talk about presidential politics way too early. The beginning of the year comes, and the whole thing, when people are starting to say, okay, maybe I'll pay attention to this presidential race now that it's the year of 24. And by the way, most of the mechanics of it are done, right?
Right. But you have to remember, our system's original assumptions were that we wouldn't be paying attention all the time. And that's why, we're in a kind of a period where we've gone haywire, and that's why we're all fed up with it. We're not supposed to pay attention. We're private citizens first who create government to basically allow us to go do what we want. And so now we all have to pay attention all the time, and we're getting overloaded, and we don't like it. I don't like it, and I've devoted my life to it. So I think part of the problem is we need to stop paying attention so much. But of course, we're now products, trying to get people to sort of glob onto us, so we make everything the most important issue ever, and that just keeps ramping up and up and up, and we get sick of it.
Do you not like some of it because your expertise, which is proven and profound, is minimized in this time frame because everyone thinks they know everything about that?
No, I'm concerned more from a citizen perspective, as someone who's studied democracy in the United States for 50 years almost, actually for more than 50 years. What bothers me.
Hey, listen, you're the one that grew the gray beard. I wasn't going to go there. I got rid of mine.
Have to grow hair somewhere. But the point is that we're not supposed to be participants in a game like this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We study politics, in order to make citizen decisions. And we shouldn't have to make those until elections are around. And we used to have political parties, which are amazingly effective cues. Everyone complains about parties. Parties were good. They allowed us to figure out who we should vote for without having to do all this work. And now we're told we have to do it on ourselves because we focus on the individuals, and the problem is we're sick of it. And I don't blame people for being sick of it. So stop paying attention until June. No, except for watching this show.
No, but no, believe me, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, my opening remarks, I have to put a smile on my face to know that at least most days there will be some component of conversation about this election. When I know on the other side of the radio, people are listening, but they're not interactive. My phones are not very busy about this election. You know, the primary happens, the results happen. There's a little bit of a bump in energy from the general population. The phones ring, people discuss, they debate, but it simmers very quickly and slows to a crawl. There just isn't that same kind of political energy out there anymore.
Yeah, and let's just be fair. What we should be paying attention to is why the Premier Providence High School got downgraded in its ranking, why it takes me 40 minutes to go what used to take me 10 minutes because of a bridge.
Well, we're talking about that.
Right, what I'm saying is that's the stuff we should be focused on. So that's okay to obsess over the 195 bridge. Why did we know it was so bad? How long is it going to take? You know, who's responsible? All that sort of stuff is what we should be paying attention to now, so that when the conventions happen, we can start paying attention to the candidates and choice.
What I find to be amazing is and you and I can hand-wring about this all our lives, that Trump is like ultra Trump. I mean, the blatantly misogynistic commentary that he was making over Nikki Haley's, audacity to actually take the stage. She did congratulate him softly, but she did. He didn't hear it. He was so angry. He talks about her dress.
Which he called cheap, which is a $600 dress you get at Neiman Marcus.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, the misogyny is just so blatant, and it's and the evangelical built-in vote, whose Bible passages would probably instruct against admiring such behavior, seems to go out the window. Is it just abortion? Is it just that?
No, it's identity. This kind of connection to Trumpism, and Trump is the label of Trumpism.
Back to what you were saying before.
Yeah, that's right. It's this identity. Our whole being is defined and determined by what happens to the object that we're focused on. And so it's not really the abortion. It's not even, I would argue, public policy. It's definitely not public policy. It's just this feeling of community or connection or identity to something larger than themselves that people naturally need and we no longer get from our parish or our little town.
When the Giants have a bad season, or the Patriots have a bad season, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and I mean, back when we were growing up, the Giants were even bigger deals for us because there were no free agents, and so the guys stayed on the team forever.
Right.
And so we had even more invested in that whole identity. So yeah, it's not unlike that kind of childlike affiliation with a label and a concept.
Right. What are we going to do with these two old guys? We'll talk about it next. Stay with us.
The reason women are being forced to travel across state lines for health care is Donald Trump. The reason their family members are trying to get help, them to threatened with prosecution, is because of Donald Trump. And the reason their fundamental right has been stripped away is Donald Trump.
So, the abortion issue will be front and center.
It will be.
When this whole nomination process evens out, and it is Trump and it is Biden, this is going to be a big argument, correct?
Correct, and it's probably going to be more important for Biden than for Trump.
Sure, to see how well Biden brings that message.
Brings the message and brings that 25 to 30% of Republicans who don't seem like they're ever going to vote for Donald Trump. Even in Iowa, there were a significant number of people who made it very clear they would never vote for him. But the problem is, would they vote for Biden?
So even in that bite, he stutters twice, and I've never been bothered by it. I mean, he's had a stuttering problem all his life, but now multiplied by his gait and by the way he moves, and there are times when he just looks too old for the job. Period. And I saw some data today a network poll that shows that the amount of people who in 2020 who felt that Joe Biden was incapable was under 50%. Now it's close to 80. How does he overcome that? You've told me before that people need to discard that and think about the biggest,
well,
the
they
administration
do need to,
being
but will
big.
they?
But,
but they probably won't.
Is there a place where he has got to recognize that the data is just too insurmountable?
No, he's never going to do that. But I do think
So you'll be teaching classes 10 years from now when you're mostly retired, or completely retired, or coming back
4 to 6 years.
Well, my point is the historians will come back and say, "Boy, was this the biggest ego mistake that sent the country into the dumper because he couldn't get out of his own way to say, I'm not the one. I did a good job, but I'm not the one."
All right. Here's the problem. Who other than Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump? The irony of this whole phase has been Joe Biden would have lost to probably almost any other Republican. Ramaswamy,
including Nikki Haley, who could wipe the floor with him.
Nikki Haley, DeSantis would have beaten him. I don't think Ramaswamy would have, but others would have. Yet, I'm not sure there's another Democrat who can beat Trump.
Because?
Name, brand, identity, known quantity. We all know
Gavin
Joe
Newsom
Biden
can't come
stutters
running from California and make a presentation. That
Gavin Newsom would arguably be, he and Gretchen Whitmer are probably the two who might have a shot at it. But it's really late in the game, and, I'm not sure Gavin Newsom could do it.
This is a high wire act, isn't it, the whole thing?
We just have to understand that we've got one stuttering old geezer and one possibly a little off-keel geezer running, who's a little younger than the older geezer. And that we have to make a choice between two, and the choice should not be only on the basis of who they are. The problem is we don't do that anymore, and we used to have parties, which, remember, it doesn't matter if he's a Republican. I believe in Republican positions.
Platform
Trump
used to be
makes that
something you
harder.
paid attention to.
Yeah, Trump makes it harder for a Republican to just say, I'm going to vote Republican, because of his personality.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the insight. Final word when we come back. I mentioned last week Ken Block would be here. He'll be here next week. He's written a book about the evidence on January 6th and the election. So be there then. Bye.